How's everybody doing? All right. So high energy. Every time someone asks that at the beginning, you go, all right.
All right. Well, so I'm Steve Vassallo with Foundation Capital, early stage venture. So I focus mostly on technology and design. I led our investments in some interesting companies, Sunrun and Pocket, who struggle with and work on a lot of growth initiatives. And with me, I'm thrilled to have Alex. Alex is a friend for a while here and has been at Facebook now 7 years, is that right?
7 years. 7 years in November.
7 years in November. Came to Facebook from eBay as a marketing manager there. And for those of you who have insomnia issues in the middle of the night, you can watch some of his paper airplane videos, which is how Alex put himself through school. So he's been doing growth kind of things since he was a wee kid. But in any case, so it's going to be fun, Alex. You have an interesting background. In fact, you've been described by many smart people as a mad scientist turned marketer. I think technically you have a couple degrees in physics. And I'd love for you to just share, how is it that a physicist becomes a marketer?
So you mentioned, like, I paid for college with a paper airplane website because I'm ridiculously nerdy. Even in the physics department, I was super nerdy at Cambridge. Like, I did a lecture about how to make the best paper airplanes. And then created this website about it, and they got a lot of traffic to it, and a bunch of YouTube video views, and my parents were both unemployed, and so we didn't really have enough money to cover college, and so I had a bursary and a scholarship, which was awesome, but I still needed a little bit more, and I worked summers, did call centers, all this kind of stuff. But I found out I could make a little bit of money online from SEO with affiliate programs, and then buying clicks from Google when AdWords came out, and reselling them to eBay for like a 20% margin. And that was how I paid for college, and that was how I moved. And it turns out that actually maths is a very important no one British in the audience, is a very important skill to be doing good online marketing. So that's how I got into that. And then, eBay came around and looked to hire people to work for eBay to do this stuff in-house. And so I moved from being an affiliate marketer for eBay to being a manager on the affiliate program in the UK within eBay.
Right on.
And that was how I made the transition.
Cool. And that was more than 10 years ago.
That was more than 10 years ago. I had hair. It was amazing.
So you were part of the original growth team, which, if you think now, I'm guessing there are many folks in the room here who are at companies where having a growth team is the norm. Many high-growth consumer companies have growth teams today. But this was really the first one. And I'm curious, sort of, how did that get started? Why was it formed? How is it that you became a part of it? Why does it still exist? You've got more than 1 billion users.
Yep. So the first thing to bear in mind, and I don't know how helpful this is to you guys, I hope it's helpful, but product market fit drives everything. And to get the chance to work on growth at Facebook is an enormous privilege, because the original growth team was like Zuck and Dustin and those guys, and there were even some earlier engineers, Will Chen, James Wang, some really awesome people who worked on this stuff before we created the growth team that people have heard about today. And they did some awesome things. So if you read the Facebook effect, there's some stuff in it about how they were able to win in multiple colleges around the United States by launching everywhere within 50 miles of a college, by making sure they won in all those schools, and then if that college in the center had a competitor, they were then able to come in and beat the competitor in the central college. And like, those guys from day one were incredibly focused on making sure that Facebook got to 1 billion users. The growth team itself got started. There was this guy, Chimoth Palihapitiya, who we like to call Young Chamath, who always tells people when he does these things that he nearly fired me on multiple occasions, which is probably true. Chimoth was one of the VPs at Facebook at the time, VP and co-COO with Van Natta. And what had happened at the end of 2007 was Facebook had really hit a brick wall in terms of growth. So Facebook had like 50 to 60 million active users, and the growth had slowed substantially. And there were a lot of reasons for that, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that we weren't focused enough on getting people ramped up when they signed up for Facebook. So it was an awesome product, but lots of people were signing up. And you've heard this from Twitter, you've heard this from LinkedIn, you've heard this from other social companies. People weren't ramping up and finding 10 friends in 14 days, which is the famous metric that Mark has talked about. So that was one. And also, Facebook was only available in English. And at the time, MySpace was available in German, well, FIGS, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. And they were growing tremendously in those markets. And we were only available in English. So Mark actually reprioritized a lot of stuff inside Facebook at the time. I was working on advertiser growth and growing the number of active pages and self-service advertisers we had at Facebook at that time. And Mark actually repurposed a bunch of us to work for Chimoth that Chimoth asked to have on his team, and focus on user growth. And so I started off with like improving our SEO products that have been out for a while, optimizing our email campaigns, and it all kind of went from there.
And why does it still exist today?
So, I mean, when you think about things in the US, like everyone is on, an Android smartphone or an iPhone or some kind of really high-end phone.
This is the iPhone 6, by the way.
Yeah, I wish. I dropped my Samsung S3 and now I have an S5, which is very lovely. And more people are on Android, obviously, than iOS, so that's why I use an Android, is because it's the majority user interface. And also, if you look at the developing world, which is where we're getting most of our growth now, India is probably the single most important country for growth for Facebook. I was out there a couple of months ago, Cheryl was out there last month. We have a team there right now working through registration flows. The majority of people in India are registering on a phone with a phone number, and they're registering with one of these. Which the battery has been charged like 6 days ago, and I actively use Facebook on this every day to try and find bugs. And it's still got 4 out of 5 bars on the battery right now, which is crazy.
Just a basic feature phone.
Just a basic feature phone, but what's happening is people are signing up on these. And about 3 years ago, we bought a company called Snap2 in Israel, and we announced last year that it broke 100 million active users, and it's a Java app. Doesn't even run on this phone, unfortunately, but it's a Java app that runs on the very low-end feature phones. And the stuff that we're focused on now, it used to be, okay, how do we get email delivered across Hotmail, Yahoo, Gmail? How do we get people to find their friends when they sign up by contact importing from those sites so that they can actually find the people they care about when they ramp up on Facebook so they can get that first 10 friends in 14 days. But today it's very different. Like your typical user is signing up on a feature phone. They're signing up in suburban Delhi. They're not signing up in rural India. They're still signing up in urban centers, but they're signing up in like suburban Delhi. And how, when someone signs up on a basic mobile site, do you confirm their phone number? Do you reliably deliver SMS? Look at WhatsApp, right? They have hundreds of millions of active users. Every single one has confirmed their account with an SMS. We are doing the same thing every single day when you look at people who are registering on feature phones in India. And we can't do, like on Android, you can listen for the SMS to arrive, and you can auto-conf the account without having to push the user out and back. With SMS, you can't even guarantee that you can click the link in the SMS to confirm your account. Other things are, Hindi is the 4th largest language in the world. So the way we do language translations at Facebook is a combination of community translations, which was something that the team pioneered and was amazing, and enabled us to get to over 80 languages actively translated, and professional translations. But how do we uncork Hindi? We've like quadrupled the number of users in Hindi in the last year by simple changes like making sure that so the other thing about these phones that's like totally incredible is they're mainly navigated by images. So if you look at how these phones work, you've got an SMS app, you've got a web browsing app, you've got a phone app, but there's no names next to them. And so the majority of phones that ship in India ship with English US being the default operating system locale. That gets sent to us in the accept headers when we get people. Is anyone interested in this? Okay, good. This is great.
Go international.
But like they send ENUS as the accept header, so we then put the phone in ENUS as the language we give to you by default. Then what we do is the next language we offer up in our options is the most popular language in the country after that. Turns out in India that's British English. People use an awful lot. And so that's the second one. And then the third language, yes, fine, is the most popular, next biggest language in the country, which in India is simplified English or Indian English. And so people get English, English, or English with a more button in English as their options when they come and they speak Hindi. And so simple things like making that available on the homepage has totally changed the trajectory of our growth in Hindi. But that's why we still have a growth team. It's not focused on how do you squeeze the last 10 users out of the United States. It's focused on how do we make the entire world more open and more connected by bringing everyone onto the platform.
Alex oftentimes talks about getting the product out of the way. This is, I think, a really interesting way of just let the user do what the user wants to do. I'm curious, my next question sort of relates to a question for you all, which is how many folks would broadly categorize themselves as from marketing versus from product? So marketing, raise your hands if you sort of feel like you're from marketing. And then how many folks are in product, broadly speaking? So a lot more marketers here. So this is exactly sort of the core of the question for Alex, which is when he was at eBay, you technically had the title of a marketing manager. But when I look at and think about the things that you do, including the example you just used, it's a lot more core to product development, to understanding usage, to understanding design and data and psychology and how all these things come together in terms of usage.
Yep.
And I'd love for you to kind of talk about that component of this and how core is this to product for you all? What is the dynamic, and maybe some examples of how you guys work with marketing and product?
One of the things I feel most passionate about getting the opportunity to work at a company, like Facebook. I joined when it had a few hundred people, so it's still a very successful, quite large company, multi-billion-dollar valuation. It wasn't a tiny startup when I joined, but getting the chance to join a company like Facebook that was just setting out on doing online marketing was an amazing privilege, because working at eBay, they had an incredible team, and when you look at who came out of the team, there are people like Matt Ackley, who's CMO of Marin Software, John Correll, who's president of Neiman Marcus now, Gary Briggs, who's our CMO at Facebook. You've got Mike Osborne, who was like a VP and leader at HomeAway, and other amazing people, Chris Orton, who's president of Orbit, who I respect a huge amount. But we were siloed. We were siloed off to one side in the marketing organization, and most of our engineering support came from like contractors who built things like our paid search systems. And it made it very hard to do the work. And listening to some of the stuff that was set up here earlier by like really smart, really awesome people about how they had to get the data out of their company into a third-party vendor and send it off. Conversion rates drop exponentially with time from an action happening. If you can in real time trigger an email to someone, if you can make sure that at the moment someone is taking an action in a product, you then upsell them to take the next logical step. To drive friending for Facebook, to get people connected to people they really care about, people you may know is an incredibly important feature. And the best time for a new user who's ramping up to show them people you may know is when they've just added a friend. Is to show them that next friend who they should add. Oh, you've added Steve as a friend? Do you know John? Do you know Charles? It's like a really great user experience. And it's an interface between marketing and product to get that seamless moment to hit them with the right message at the right time. And I think the real deep integration with product allows you to have a personalized message, and it really allows you to get a super timely message to the person. So what we did from day one with Facebook's growth team that I'm like incredibly proud of is we built it into the product and engineering teams. And my marketing team is 20 people, well, 26 people. And we cover advertiser growth for self-service advertiser acquisition, and growth, user growth, growth around messenger applications, support for internet.org. We support a bunch of these teams. We support it with a very tiny team who mainly are experts on data with engineering and CS degrees who can talk the language of the product manager, but think the way that a marketer thinks, and think about what would be the right message for the user, how can you personalize it, how can you trigger it, how can you make it awesome.
Yep. So it sounds a lot more craft-like than it does hacky, and because it's very purposeful and data is a big part of it. Is there, for folks who are sort of core growth thinkers or folks who have been working in this for 10 years, is there a pushback in terms of the growth hacking terminology? Would you propose an alternate that might actually be more respectful to the domain that is what you're talking about?
I mean, so I call my team growth marketing, and a lot of the team don't love it because they don't like the word marketer. Because
hack is better than market.
And actually I think this is somehow this came about, because you go into an engineering team as a marketer, even at a company like Facebook where we have, I believe, a well-respected team, and new engineering teams who don't know us start with a lack of respect because they hear the word market, and marketing's been a dirty word at least as long as I've been in the Valley for 10 years. And as a marketer, I actually like to rail against that and say, no, let our results speak for themselves, and I'm fine to be a growth marketer. And I also run internationalization and analytics for the growth team, but the growth marketing team where I started, I like calling us growth marketers because I want to give marketing a good name with engineers, because so many people, I don't know who follows the Marketunist. He's an amazing guy. He's got this awesome blog. It's hilarious. And he puts up these images he's preaching. He has this one like about now our mousetrap is 5% bigger. The world will beat a path to our door. And it's just not true. Build it and they will come is not the correct thing to think all the time. And I think marketing actually is a really important business function. And I want the Valley to respect marketing again, and that's why I want to call it growth marketing.
A lot of marketers here. I think you guys probably support this point of view as well.
Because we do an important job.
Yeah, it's great. So maybe a more tactical question. So a friend of mine who is working on a product that has the ongoing growth challenges of many startups, of folks probably in the room. was recently advised by a sort of self-described growth hacker to make some tweaks to his product that felt really risky. They almost sort of pushed on some of his core values in a way that raised some questions. I'd love for you to kind of talk through, for those folks in the room who are struggling with that, they love their product, they know they also need to grow it, but some of the things they're going to have to do might actually feel too risky. How did you guys handle that? I know that you've done a lot of experimentation, but walk through sort of that tender balance.
So I think it's really important to know this. Like at its core, are you building? A lot of the folks who argue for these really hacky, short-term things are not looking at a 10-year, 20-year horizon. And one of the things I really love about Mark is that he takes the long view. He really takes the long view. And you can trick a user once, you can trick a user twice, but if you have a habit of tricking a user to click a button that does something they don't want, or they import contacts and instead of asking them, do you wish to send an invite, you just send it in the background, which a lot of companies do, those users will cease to trust you. And they will not click the buttons in the future that are, maybe they send invites, but maybe they're update status, maybe they check in. And so if you really have a long-term point of view on this, you cannot be duping users because they won't stay with you. And retention is the #1 thing we focus on the growth team at Facebook. Like, how do we increase the retention of users? How do we find them their first friend, right? How do we connect them to the people they care about in the world? How do we get them to update their profile picture so that their friends will accept their friend request because they know it's them? This is the really, really important stuff, and you can't trick users into doing that. Now, that being said, there's a really fine line, and this is the place where I think it gets very hard. There's a really fine line between removing friction and duping users. And you have to be very honest with yourself. You have to have a great design team, you have to have a great product team, and a great leader like Zuck, and Cox, who can hold you accountable for giving people a great user experience without tricking them, but removing as much friction as possible from the experience. Because every little bit of friction you add hurts users as well. So tricking users hurts users, adding friction hurts users, and walking the line between those two things is very, very tough, and you can't be perfectly right. But if you're far too far on high friction, you will never grow.
Yeah, that's great advice. So every few months, I stumble across a product or service where my first thought is, damn, I wish I had invented that. That's so cool. And I'm curious, when you look out into the world of the many growth initiatives at companies, both at Facebook as well as others, what are some of the things you look at and say, that was really smart? I wish I had thought of that.
I mean, it sounds obvious now, and obviously we're in the middle, but like I look at WhatsApp and I'm blown away by what those guys have achieved. They were so ruthlessly prioritized on performance, on reliability, like how they deal with getting SMS confirmations, the startup time of their app. If you've ever cold started their app versus the SMS app on your Android, it's incredible. So those guys, their focus on what matters for the user, like blew me away. I love TimeHop. I use it every day. I think their notification and email strategy is incredible. And Uber was one, I'm sort of proud of myself that like WhatsApp and other companies I felt I called early. I didn't see Uber coming at all. And the way they acquire drivers, ramp drivers up, and give users an amazing experience, just that has impressed me a tremendous amount. They've got a really great team there, and I didn't call it.
Right. And you were working in marketplaces before, and Alex is acutely aware of the balance between supply and demand, and driver acquisition, as you pointed out to me, was something that they just nailed early.
Yeah.
And of course that created liquidity for users to kind of get a car anywhere. So we are out of time. We don't have any time for questions here, but Alex is a really special guy, towering figure in growth, and doing some amazing things, and also one of the most humble people I know in this area, because he's impacted literally billions of users, and hope you all thank him with me, and hopefully this was helpful for you all. So anyway, thanks very much.